So last time, Nivedita, we were talking about my return visit to India after visiting Turkey, and I stopped
Right,
at Dubai.
right.
I'll tell you something about meat exports, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, I found that one of the naval officers who had left the Navy, he had been on the staff of Admiral Nanda, he decided to take me around the whole of Dubai, including a golf course. Very interesting, even with goldfish and all that. They had spent a lot of money and they brought seawater, desalinized it, and had streams running through the golf course, beautiful greens and beautiful fairways, goldfish. And he was telling me that he was making a lot of business because he was exporting meat, beef and mutton to the Middle East, and from Middle East it was going all over the world. And he stated that his meat was cheaper and superior to Australian meat or Argentinian meat or British beef, which were famous. So I said, how did you manage that? So he said, we've got abattoirs in Gujarat area, north of Bombay, where he says we can invite you to visit. They are as clean as an operation theater in a hospital. All workers are fully sterilized, gloves and all that before they do the preparation of this meat and the butchering of the cattle or the sheep or whatever it is. And he says, since we do that and we pay so much attention to the cleanliness and care, that the meat tastes better and has a very big market. So I rather complained that so can we in the Indian Army also draw meat from the market, and it's absolutely horrible meat. He said, no, the thing is that you army people, and especially the Army Service Corps, which deals with the civilian hierarchy, are perhaps good Indians and perhaps as corrupt also. So he says what happens is that they accept meat which is of substandard. And in fact, what the contractors do, take sheep and goat and things like that, they inject them with water before the army weighs them and accepts them according to weight. But the result, the meat is not very good. Nor are they looked after carefully in their farms or their grazing or their medical attention and all that. They're full of antibiotics. That just goes to show that I think corruption is pretty well embedded in our country, and unless we allow our people to charge more, if you like, but very high standards of product, we are not going to be able to export these goods abroad. He was an example. I'm talking of 1989, so it's improved now after so many years, but perhaps we have a long way to go to beat the type of cheese, milk, meat, etc. that is exported from New Zealand, Australia, or from Britain, or from Argentina, or from Brazil for the world market. Anyway, I got back to India, and here, as I told you, 1989 was a very interesting year. I was wanting to invite the American Army chief to come and visit us. So this proposal went off to the Foreign Ministry. And the Foreign Ministry was not very happy with this proposal. They said, we don't want to invite the Americans. Now, it's very difficult to find out what motivated them to say that. Perhaps India has been very shabbily treated by the United States over the years because they were pro-Pakistan. They assisted Pakistan for all the wars that we fought because their weapons, equipment, etc. were used against India, despite the fact that the Americans said that it was not so, but that was our experience. And with the people who supported India right from independence till lately was then the Soviet Union, and after Soviet Union, the Russians. Now, what is that relationship? I told you earlier when we were discussing Moscow, I found the Russians are very innocent of evil market practices, if I might call them, which the West involved in. The Western world, their democracies, yes, but if you see their politicians and others, they're very, very cunning. The word cunning is different to clever. Whereas the Russian leadership, military and civilian, are perhaps more straight, and if you say something to them, they'll probably believe it. That relationship with India came up, and they helped us with our nuclear energy plant for production of electricity. They enlisted us in our military. They gave us equipment at much cheaper rates than what anywhere else in the world you could get. So naturally, the foreign ministry and others were quite taken up with the Nehruvian, Jawaharlal Nehru's time point of, yes, we are independent and we are non-aligned, but we are leaning more towards Soviet Union and Russia than to others. Also, perhaps there's another point here, as you saw with the 1971 war, when Indira Gandhi was the prime minister. Since we were going to we were attacking East Pakistan at that time, and we were concerned about the Chinese on the northern borders making a military show. So relationships with Russia were the ones that perhaps held China back, because Indira Gandhi did a deal, a diplomatic deal with the Russians or the Soviets at that time. And when the American fleet, I had told you all this earlier, when the American fleet with the Enterprise 7th Fleet came into the Bay of Bengal to threaten India in case it attacks East Pakistan, on the plea that they're there to save American citizens who are in East Pakistan, it was the Russians, the Soviets, who sent a few nuclear submarine and all that sort of thing to the Bay of Bengal to create some caution to the American 7th Fleet. Now, we all remember that. But now, when I was the chief, that was in 89, and I knew that the Soviet Union was collapsing and it was becoming weaker, shall I say, because of the fact that Mr. Gorbachev sold it out to the US. There was internal problems. So I found that the foreign ministry was still pro-COVID. So I said, look, if I invite the Americans, what's the big deal? We are not unfriendly with them. We're just more friendly with the Russians, let us say. That does not stop us from making greater friendships with the United States. You recollect that right from childhood, I did believe that if you're a weaker country, it takes time for you to develop. You must have a good friend with a big stick in his hand. And certainly, as far as the world was concerned in my time, that was the United States. Secondly, they spoke English just like us, and therefore you could argue all sorts of things with them. And thirdly, being a democratic nation, they were ready to hear your views. All right. So, under the circumstances, I was trying to convince them that let me invite the Americans. They said, General, it's much better you visit America. But I said, previous 3 or 4 chiefs of the Indian Army had visited America on official visits, but not a single American chief has been invited, which is not correct. I said, I have no intention of visiting the United States unless I first invite the chief to visit India. It's a quid pro. So after much discussion with S.K. Singh, who was the foreign secretary at that time, we did manage to invite the American chief to come. He had already planned a visit to Pakistan for 3 days. So he said, all right. He didn't bring his wife. He came in his own plane and he visited Pakistan for 3 days. Then he visited us for 3 days. And of course, the foreign secretary was pulling my leg. You see, India is number 2 as far as the Americans are concerned. They do visit Pakistan first, then they come. I said, that's fine. Don't take these minor things to heart. The fact is, he is coming here. And let us see how we proceed. Now, as far as visiting forward troops, which I wanted the American chief to do, since he was here only for 3 days, I didn't have the time or resources to send him to Sikkim. Sikkim is the place where we are 40 yards or 40 meters apart from the Chinese picket at a height of 14,200 feet at Nathula in Sikkim, the division I had command. And since I'd been an Eastern Army commander, I knew that the whole border of India and China was huge. The border didn't exist because they didn't believe us and we didn't believe them. With the result, that is a growing threat. It is not there in my time, but there's no doubt in my mind that it would grow as it has done. So I wanted the American chief to visit Sikkim to show him our confrontation with China. because the Americans only believe that India and Pakistan are the two blood brothers who are fighting each other for the rest of the world history. This is not true because India is facing a much larger enemy in the northern border. Anyway, I couldn't take him because he came only for 3 days. So I alternatively decided to send him to the Thar Desert, the Jodhpur and Jaipur, of course, is the capital of Rajasthan, but some of the desert areas of Jodhpur where we had just started a war. And when he came, I asked him, I said, look, I did want to send you to Sikkim, but our planes are slow. And there were only 3 days, so you can't do it. So I propose to send you to the Western border. He said, that's fine, whatever you do. I also arranged for him a Major General of the Indian Army, a very fine chief officer, who had been a student of mine when I was the instructor at the Staff Corps. Now he'd become a Major General, doing very well in that. A person called General Man, and he was from the Bihar regiment. And I detailed him since he had, as the liaison officer to the American chief, because he had done the Commander in General Staff College in the United States for a whole year. So he knew the Americans very well, plus he was a very good officer of the Indian Army. So I brought him into my office and briefed him. I said, the idea here is to treat the American chief like your own friend, like an Indian general, if you will, and be good and do your best. And I don't have to brief a general as to how he should conduct himself. He knows how to conduct himself. But the guidance was that we have to be friends. Then in the American embassy here, there was an American military attaché called Colonel Tim Hunt. Now, Colonel Tim Hunt and I had become very friendly because he was calling on me quite often. And then his wife, Esther, used to come and meet my wife in the house and also invite us to American parties and so on. We used to go to all the parties. So we had become quite friendly. And I found that Colonel Hunt had been in India on three postings from a major upward. I don't think he was going to go very far in the American Army, but he had been sent here on his third posting. And he had a total of about 7 or 8 years in India. And since he and his wife are very interested in the culture, he'd also done the National Defense College here. He could speak Hindi and Urdu very well, and he could understand what anybody was talking about amongst our troops. So I told the American chief, whose name was Carl Warner, I said, look, here is your military attaché from the American embassy. He's your man, but he can be my LO for you also because he knows India as well as anyone else. So Carl Warner had 2 interpreters available to him. One was his own officer, Colonel Hunt, and one was General Mann, whom I had given to him. And he had a couple of staff officers. We sent him to Rajasthan. We sent him to the forward corps. And we had just raised that corps, which was on the border and located near Jodhpur. We arrived in Jodhpur and very pleased with what he saw. We all looked after him. I also made a program for 3 days. But I told him when he's visiting army stations like Jodhpur, for instance, and he was also scheduled to visit Jaipur, I said, these are the military units here. You are welcome to change the program at your pleasure and visit any of our units by surprise. Now, to explain to you, Nivedita, this business, when a dignitary is visiting a military unit and the military unit knows that he's coming at a particular time and date, then that military unit prepares for that visit. Everything is spick and span, the Jawans are looking very smart, and training is going on excellently. You want to put your best foot forward. So I told them, if you really want to see the structure of the Indian soldier, you can change your program at will without any notice to visit and visit them by surprise. The idea here is that you literally catch the unit with its pants down, as one might say, at a time when they don't expect you. And therefore, you can gauge for yourself the quality of the soldiers in office when they are not ready for your visit. So after finishing Jodhpur, he came to Jaipur, and the foreign ministry suggested that Americans love riding elephants. So we laid on an elephant at his Rajbagh hotel. one of the famous five-star hotels in Jaipur. I said, forget it. He's a military man. He doesn't bother about elephants. They said, no, no, General, we have to impress the Americans. So we have to lay down an elephant. Carl Bono Debillion looked at the elephant. He said, not bothered. What he told my yellow was that which are the military units here? And we had a brigade toward the other end of Jaipur from where he was staying. So he said, let me visit one of those units by surprise. So there were 3 infantry battalions. And I think there was a Rajput battalion, there was a Jat battalion, and maybe there was a Garhwal battalion. So then my yellow asked him, which one do you want to visit? So he sort of, any, mini, minor, he said, visit the Jats. Now the Jats were about 40 minutes drive from his hotel. So my yellow asked him, what time would you like to visit during the day? Of course, this was a unscheduled visit, and the battalion did not know that this planning was going on. So according to my instructions, the yellow took it from that point to keep the surprise of the visit. So he said, what time would you like to visit? So he said, which is the time when the battalion would be at rest. That means they won't be doing any duty. So he said, well, about 3 o'clock or 3:30 in the afternoon, because they finish their work at about 1 o'clock, and the men relax, they have an afternoon nap because it's very hot, and then they go for games and sports. Games and sports will be about 5 o'clock. So if you say 3:30, mostly the chaps are in their barracks, relax. This is all right. That's visit then. So the idea was to inform the commanding officer that this American chief is arriving just 10 minutes before he actually reached the battalion headquarters. And the commanding officer was living in a house which must have been about 15 or 20 minutes away. So he would be taken by surprise, and he would call for some transport because he had not ordered it, or get onto a bicycle and try and reach his unit wearing his PT kit or whatever it is, because they get ready for games in the evening. So the commanding officer was surprised. He started making a dash for his battalion to be there to receive the American chief, but the American chief arrived before the commanding officer had arrived. So my fellow was very clever, because the first thing you go to when you visit a unit is to go to the quarter guard. Now let me explain what a quarter guard is. The quarter guard is a guard of about 12 men and 2 NCOs, where the weapons of the battalion are stored, and these are guarded. And if any of the people have been punished, because the commanding officer has the right to punish a Jawan for up to 28 days of rigorous imprisonment as a normal punishment, or to give him pittu parades or whatever it is, depending on the type of crime he has committed. So if there are any prisoners, then they're also kept as a quarter guard under the supervision of the guard. And the quarter guard, since it's on duty, very smartly turned out. And they're on duty from, say, 7 in the morning till last night, about 6 and 7 in the evening. And then they get into battle fatigue for the night, and the sentries keep changing around every 2 hours or whatever it is. They're there for 24 hours, next day the guard is changed. But when they're on duty during daytime, they're in ceremonial dress. Now, as you know, our Jats are very tall, smart people. They speak in a very nasty way, if I might tell you, because that's the manner of speaking, very rude method of speaking. They don't mind putting curses into every sentence, which you have to accept, because that's how they function. But physically, they are tall, smart, very good soldiers, very smart. So when the chief arrived there, he suddenly arrived at the quarter guard. The quarter guard came to attention. They saw a high-ranking officer. In any case, there was an Indian Major General present. And so the guard commander turned out the guard. He posed in very quickly and gave him a salami shast. Very smart. The American chief was very impressed. He said, my God, I didn't expect that at 3:30 in the afternoon, when everybody's resting, is such a smart guard. So the RNO explained to him, no, these are quarter guards. They're on duty for 24 hours. So they are there for the battalion. So he said, what is this quarter guard? He said, there are a number of rooms behind. And he said, this is where all the magazines are kept, where the explosives, the ammunition, and the weapons are kept separate. He said, I want to see that. So we took him to them, where all the weapons are stored. We had a look at the 2 rifles, very clean, very nice. But by the time they're stored, they're spotlessly clean, well oiled. He said, very good. There's a visitor's book which he signed. Then he saw these other few rooms and he said, what are these? He said, these are prisoners' cells in case there's anybody. So he asked the guard commander through the interpreter, he says, have you got any prisoner? He said, yes, I've got a prisoner. So he asked the guard commander, what is this prisoner here for? He's got 28 days rigorous imprisonment, sir, in Hindi. So then the chief wanted to find out from my what is 28 days rigorous imprisonment? What do you do to that? So they explained that she's in the jug for 28 days, but 4 times a day or whatever days you have to wear all the heavy packs and things and go running up and down in the heat as a punishment, which also builds his bodily strength and his capability of carrying heavy weights. So the military punishments are physically tough, but they do develop you for military operations also. But he's confined. He can't go out and he can't meet his friends and all that. The chief army American chief, I want to see this chap. He went to see this chap and he was this fellow inside the. He asked him and with the interpreter's assistance, hey, what do you think? You got your punishment, I'm told. He said, yes, sir, I've got 28 days out. He said, why did you get it? They said, I didn't do anything. I mean, a minor affair. The commanding officer got angry and gave me 20. The chief was happy to hear that. He says, how are you functioning? He says, I'm miserable because I have to go 3 or 4 times a day with that huge pack. So then the chief asked him, let me have a look at this pack. This pack weighs about 30 kg. See? Because all the stuff that a chap has to carry, he doesn't use that pack in actual battle, but he has to carry it to the battle, all his stuff, including food and mess tins and all that sort of things. He has to cook his own food and some rations and plus change of clothing, change of socks, then a water bottle, ammunition, all that. So he said, well, this is a very heavy pack. India says very heavy, and I'm a miserable man because you carry it in the hot sun. So he chatted with this. He's very pleased with the bold answers he got from the prisoner. Stoic man, still doing his punishment, but complaining like that. So after that, he decided to, came out of the quarter guard. He says, what are those buildings over there? He says, those are Jawan's barracks. We started walking cross country, the flat terrain, to the Jawan's barracks. On the way, as my hero described, there was a huge man coming, one of the soldiers, dressed in a lungi. You know what a lungi is? And a vest. And, bulging muscles and all that, about 6 foot 2 inch tall, massive shoulders, carrying a lota. So he was walking, and the chief's party came and sort of confronted each other. So he asked the interpreter to ask him, hello, I'm sorry, am I disturbing you? Where are you going? And what's this you're carrying? He says, this is a lota, I'm going to the latrine. He pointed out there was the Jawan's latrine. So he said, I'm very sorry, I've interfered with you. Please carry on. He said, no, I've got time. I can talk to you. So then the chief asked him, you look like a very tough chap. What do you do in your battalion? He said, sir, I am the top battalion wrestler. Not only that, I have reached up to the command level. That means, wrestling competitions in the army or any sports competition. You start with the unit, then you go to the brigade level, the division level, and eventually to the command level, that's the army commander's level. And then if you're selected there, you go to the army team, which contests with the other civilian teams in the country, and sometimes international teams, depending on your capability. He says, I've already reached the army level, army commander's level, and I'm going further. I'm going to be one of the top wrestlers of this country. So the chief asked him, what do you do all day? He says, I wrestle, and I eat, and I sleep. He said, but don't you do any military work? He said, who bothered about military work? I'm a tough man. I can do anything. So chief asked him, can you fire a rifle? And he said, yes, I fire. I'm one of the best shots in the regiment. It doesn't mean if I'm a wrestler that I can't be a soldier. Then the chief asked him that in Jodhpur here, or rather in Jaipur, what is your role in war? He said, the Jaipur brigade will go to the Rajasthan border against Pakistan. That is the Jaisalmer border. It is war. So the chief asked him that you think there's a possibility of war? Because I hear, according to the Indian press and the American press, there's always something going on between India and Pakistan. And in those days in 1989, there was a lot of problems with Pakistan. That there may be war. What do you think of that? I don't know, sir. These big shots always claim they are war, but as a matter of fact, you ask me, there'll be no war. So we asked the man, why do you say there'll be no war? He says, because we are so tough, they'll get a thrashing. They got a thrashing in 1970, in 65, they got another thrashing in 71. And now in 1971, we broke their country in half. They got no guts to fight with us. They just make noise. And if he said, but supposing there is war, he said, then we'll thrash them again. So he's very happy to hear that. And this man didn't show much respect for the big shots and the generals of Delhi who pontificate about what's going to happen or not happen. He's a solid soldier. He knew that there will be no war with us. Okay. And as it turned out, except for the Kargil war, he had been right. Then he carried on and inspected better. Meanwhile, the commanding officer landed up. And I just describing this in detail to you because I think this American chief was terribly impressed. He came back to Delhi with me and I was discussing with him how his visit went. He said, you know, your soldiers are just like the American soldiers. Now, between you and me, Nivedita, I thought that was a disadvantage to be told to the Indian soldier that he's like an American soldier. We think we are much superior. That's our view. But the chief said that, you know, the American soldier doesn't have much respect for a superior and is ready to say so. Therefore, to command them, you have to be a very good officer. And she says, I see the same in your Jawans. They don't have much respect unless you're a very good officer, they don't think much of it. That's his view. I said, no, they are very disciplined. And if they find that the officer is weak in battle, but he's part of the regiment for the izzat of the unit, you know, izzat, honor. They carry that man on his shoulders. A good battalion, if you find the weak officer, they don't want anybody else in the army to know that he's a weak officer. There's an operation to be done. The JCOs and ranchers get together, they do it and carry him along. And if he's a good officer, then they're very happy with that. So I explained that to him. I said, yeah, in the Western world, when the officer gets commissioned and he comes to the unit, he has to prove his worth to the Jawan, to the soldier, before they accept him as a leader. But I said in India, they have such respect for rank that when you come out of the Indian Military Academy and join the regiment, they accept you as a leader till you prove to them that you're not a leader. Then they have to carry you on their shoulders. I said, that's the difference. That's our art, because they do have a lot of intrinsic discipline. They've been soldiers from ancient Mahabharata, Ramayana. Indian people have been very good soldiers throughout history. So this is their quality. It's a very fine quality, one of the finest armies in the world. Anyway, he was very happy to see that. And he told me, he said, look, General, you have to come and visit America, but you showed me the inside of your army. And I want to show you the inside of the American army so that you also see that our American soldiers as good as your Indian. So I said, but I had no intention of visiting America because it's not my turn. I mean, the previous 2-3 chiefs have been to America. Now probably the next chief who comes up will have time to visit you. I've got a schedule of events and I invited you here so that the next chief would come visit you. But I have got other functions to do with the number of visits the man permitted. No, you have to come. I want to show you my army. So you must come, and American army and the Indian army must be very friendly. So I said, you're already very friendly with the Pakistan army. Why is it you're not friendly with the Indian army already? He said, because you Indians do not permit us Americans to be friendly. I said, how's that? He said, because as far as Pakistan is concerned, they are one-to-one with us. We've known their generals since we were second lieutenants, captains, majors throughout our career. They're coming to America for courses. We are going to Pakistan to attend some of their courses. We are attending exercises together. Since it's part of our various Southeast PT organization, various organizations, we are exercising military with them in Pakistan, in the Philippines, in the Middle East, everywhere. So we know their officers. I mean, they become generals, we know their wives, we know their children, and they know us. So it's a buddy system. We are friends. But when we come and try and make friends with the Indians, they're very chary about it. They don't. Well, perhaps you've got a point there. He said, but General, who did go out of your way to show me the Indian Army, and I'm very impressed. So you must come to my own. So I said, look, it's not my turn, but if you contact the government of India and they order me or they request me to come, then I shall consider this. They said, how do I do that? I said, when you approach your ambassador here, who should approach our foreign minister? And the foreign minister will then instruct the foreign ministry, if he is, that the foreign ministry will send me a request that could you please visit America because they want me to come. Then I should consider it, and if it's worthwhile, I'll come back with that. He said, okay, that's that. Meanwhile, he, in these 3 days, Nivedita, I must say we became very good friends. He told me something very interesting. He says, have you seen the American embassy in Delhi? I said, yes. I passed from the outside. He said, you see on top of the roof a whole lot of radars and, antenna and all that stuff. I said, yes. He said, do you know that we can pick up even the telephone conversations that are going on in your army headquarters and your government headquarters of all departments. We've got radar systems who pick up the electronic feed inside the wires of a telephone. And we can interpret it and know what the conversation is. That's very interesting. So he told me, this is talking about his own country. Now, for instance, take your office. Whatever we are saying here, there are microphones attached to your windows or something which are blown by a blowpipe from outside. Pick up this conversation. So I said, then what am I supposed to do? He said, first, you always keep your curtains drawn because a curtain prevents some of the sound system to function. If it's a tiny microphone attached to your window from outside, if you put a curtain, then there's a barrier. Secondly, he says, have some music playing in the background. From that day, I had all my curtains down. I was all having soft music being played in my office when anybody came in because the American people. Right? Anyway, he went on with this conversation. He says, now we know exactly what your government is doing, each department of government. And we see that really speaking in India, there's no governance. So I said, what do you mean there's no governance? He said, there's such a big argument going on all the time that we do not think there's any governance. Yet, I said, have you been to the travel around? He said, yes, I've been to Connaught Place. I've seen anything. I can see that the markets are overflowing with fruit and vegetables and goodies and, white goods and everything. People are going around very happily buying. And I'm surprised because if there's no governance, how is everything functioning so well? I mean, the traffic in Connaught Place goes on a particular circuit. For instance, you reach the outer circle, then you have to turn left. And suddenly when you go in a circle, so all the traffic is very obedient to the traffic laws. So he says, if there's no governance, I don't know why these steps are not a big mess like Italy, for instance, a big mess of traffic. So I said, well, India is being run very well. He said, by whom? So I pointed up like that. He looks up, he says, you mean that officer who's in the floor above you? I said, no. I'm talking about the God Almighty. He runs this. He's very surprised. Oh, yes, maybe some reason as to how this country is functioning when there's very poor government. This is the government. In those days, the government was the Rajiv Gandhi's government. Anyway, so that was his view, but we were running very well. He was very impressed. He also said something else. He said, I want to hear the Indian band. So we arranged in the evening at the City Fort Stadium a band concert. And he heard our bands playing, and his ambassador was present, and some of the American staff from the embassy, plus many of our guests and all that. And he was very impressed with the Indian band. He said, what I'll do is that I'll send the American Army band here after I go back. And if you agree, you can send them around all over your military stations and other stations in India. They play for the people so that people get used to seeing Americans with their uniforms and the fact that they play lovely music. They play Hindi tunes also. He said, because music brings people together. I said, very good. And he eventually did that. He said, secondly, I would like to send you a mountaineering team from the American Army. This mountaineering team, if you can put them to some of the Himalayan peaks, be decent to them and don't make them climb Everest or something, because they may fail. I said, don't worry. So we'll send you a team of 18 people to climb the Himalayas, whichever mountain you select, in coordination with the Indian Army team. I said, we'll do that. He said, then you send your mountaineering team to America, and they've got a thing called Mount McKinley, which is about 17,000 feet only in the Western Rockies. So we make them climb that with the Americans. The idea here is to bring the two armies together. And he said something very interesting to me, which I think has got a lot of truth in it. He says, you know, if the two army chiefs are friends, there'll never be any war between our countries. There will always be peace, no matter what the politics. If the two military chiefs are friends, there'll be no war. I said, I'm very happy to hear that. So yes, we become friends. And we did become very good friends. As a sequel to this, when he went away, since he was inviting me, the American ambassador spoke to the foreign ministry. And foreign minister spoke to the SK Singh, and he sent me not only a letter, but also rang me up, General, please go and visit me. I said, I thought you were rather antagonistic to the Americans. Why are you asking me to visit me? He says, they are wanting you to come, and if somebody wants you to come, then India must put his best foot forward. So, General, please go. I said, all right, I'll consider it. So I made an arrangement to visit the United States. That was in 1989. I had visited Russia earlier in the June period, maybe May, June, and then I decided to go and visit America about October, because the chiefs, they said, don't come in July, it's very hot and uncomfortable. Come before November, before late October, come earlier. So the weather is very nice. So I went to America. So now I will tell you about this American visit. Tim Hunt, Colonel Tim Hunt he's a very good friend of mine. He explained a lot of things that in my program, they sent my program. So I wanted to see some of their exercises. So Krupi and I decided to travel eastward. That means we go via Tokyo to the Hawaii Islands. Spend a day or two there because it's a jet lag. Spend a day or two there. But they've got an admiral in charge, a 5-star admiral of the Western Fleet, and there would be a 3-star or a 3-star army commander under him. So he would be my host. He used to go there. His name was General Kicklighter, I recollect. And so you spend 2 days, and then you can visit California and San Francisco and Los Angeles. Then in Los Angeles, you go to the desert area and see a large-scale exercise that they were conducting. I'll attend that for 2 days. And then go to Texas to see the Corps there. It is the Reserve Corps at Fort Hood. And then go to Washington and be with the chief. And he wanted me to visit Fort Leavenworth, a training institution, like our College of Cabinet, commanded by a Major General. And then a few discussions in Washington. And a weekend was coming in between. So he said, a weekend, wherever you decide, we'll make arrangements. So I wanted to see the Niagara Falls, which is ordered to arrange that. And I wanted to visit New York, so which is ordered to arrange that. So that's how that trip was arranged. Second thing that Tim Hunt told me is that you'll be required to go when you come to Washington to visit the Arlington Museum. Now, the Arlington is an area in Maryland, which is next to Washington, D.C. It used to be part of the southern United States during the Civil War of 1861-65. And they had property of Robert E. Lee, who was the commanding general of their staff college, and later on the commander-in-chief of the Southern armies when the Civil War took place, the American Civil War. So Arlington was the land that Robert E. Lee owned, and so after the war, 1865 or thereabout,